Hello and welcome to Wide Angle. Look at international affairs. In recent weeks, events in various parts of the world somewhat unfortunately pushed out of the front pages and our TV screens an event of great importance. Europe is always important to all the continents, and European elections in the end of May threw up some interesting results. Those results they give us a clue as to which direction Europe and individual countries of Europe will adopt in various fields, and whether they will get along together or not, and if they get along, on what terms, and then what will be the equation that a country like India have with a disparate European Union. To discuss this, we have an interesting panel. On my extreme right, we have Carpentier, who is publisher and editor of a journal on international affairs. We have the ambassador of the European Union, Joao Cravinho, and Ambassador Vinod, who knows Europe well because he has been ambassador in those parts. What is the significance of, Ambassador, why don't you feel? What do you think is the significance of these elections?
Well, we have been holding elections to the European Parliament for decades, but these elections are particularly significant because they are the first elections since the Lisbon Treaty, which gave considerably more powers to the European Parliament. And so for the first time, you have in this election a direct link between the voice of the citizen and the choice of the main jobs of the European Union, in particular the President of the Commission, who has just recently been chosen after the elections as a direct consequence of the elections. So we have a European Parliament that is growing in powers, and we have a European electorate that is, I think, growing in understanding of the relevance of the European Parliament. Having said that, just as in this country, in India, when there are national elections, and just held them, there is a mix of a national vote and a vote that is related to whatever is happening in the different states. Also in the European Parliament, there is partly a vote thinking about the European Union and partly thinking about national conditions, whatever they may be.
There has been a great deal of talk of a protest vote. Now, what is this? Could you define this protest vote which has come out in very high profile in these elections?
You have seen a very significant rise in votes to the far right and to the far left, caused partly by economic conditions, which are far from satisfactory, especially in countries of the south of the European Union, and also, let's face it, on political issues. It's easy to see that people are protesting, but you also have to admit that people are expressing opinions, and a lot more people now feel more nationalistic than they are European as compared to some years ago. Therefore, they are looking upon the EU institutions with suspicion and sometimes with resentment because of what is perceived as a democratic deficit on the part of an administration, of a bureaucracy which has become somewhat insulated from the common problems of the European population. And I'm afraid that the election to the parliament has not necessarily changed that, because as a result of that very strong protest vote, or at least dissident vote, you have a parliament which is of course going to be rather indocile and rather protest-minded.
Right. Vinod, talked of nationalistic urge expressing itself in this vote recently, which he said contradicts the pan-European facade. How do you see that? Then that means the larger idea is getting corroded rather than strengthened.
I think it's certainly under pressure. I mean, there's no doubt that the far left, Eurosceptic and nationalist parties, meaning the right, have gained ground at the expense of the Federalist parties. I am going to quote you some interesting figures. The ongoing Eurozone crisis, an offshoot of the Great Recession, started several months after the last Parliament election in June 2009. Although it affected most EU member states, the hardest hit economies were those of Southern Europe. Greece, Cyprus, Italy, Spain and Portugal, along with Ireland. Among other reasons, harsh austerity measures significantly affected the public approval of EU leadership. The percentage of Greeks approving the EU leadership decreased from 32% in 2010 to 19% in 2013. While in Spain, the approval dwindled more than half from 59% in 2008 to 27% in 2013. Overall, only 4 out of the 27 member countries approved the EU leadership. This is from Wikipedia. So I mean, this shows that Europe is under pressure as an entity as to whether people can continue to serve under this leadership.
Europe ambassador was supposed to subsume nationalities to some extent, and the common denominator was going to determine Europeanism. Now that seems not to be happening. There was always resistance to it, except, I mean, in France they were very keen at one stage. Germany was also there. Britain was never serious about the project. And now you have these splintering of nationalisms. How do you explain that?
I think 2 or 3 important points have been raised. Firstly, with regard to Wikipedia, which I think is an admirable project, it should never be the sole source of information. And there I would recommend that viewers also look at Eurobarometer. Eurobarometer is an opinion poll that has been tested on a number of questions over many years, and you can see evolution of thinking very clearly. The evolution of thinking actually tells you something quite different from what is suggested in Wikipedia. What it says is that Europeans want more issues, increasingly want more issues addressed at a European scale because they realize their own countries are not capable of dealing with them individually. So there is admittedly a sense, and one finds that not only in Europe, one finds it around the world, a sense of unease, sometimes with political leadership. One finds it within European countries as much as one finds it with regard to European institutions. I think the important link that is now being established between elections for the European Parliament and the choice of President of the Commission goes exactly towards covering some of the accusations of democratic deficit. And I think those who are in favor of deepening democracy in Europe must surely be in favor of a process that has such a linkage between the voice of the people and the choice of who is going to lead the institutions. I think what one can foresee for the next few years is a greater responsiveness on the part of the presidency of the Commission, precisely because he will see his political survival as linked to the way that people are interpreting.
What are the antecedents of JeanClaude Juncker? Where does he come from? I mean, viewers wouldn't know because he is a contentious figure. He is a figure who has, well, not exactly divided the European Union down the middle, but important countries have been critical of his coming on top. What are his political antecedents?
JeanClaude Juncker is, I believe, 57 or 58 years old, but he's already been Prime Minister of his country, very small country, Luxembourg, for 18 years. Anybody familiar with Luxembourg politics will know that it is essentially about consensus building. It's about keeping various different traditions together. So he's done that very successfully in his country for 18 years. Lost after 18 years the elections some months ago, and was chosen by the largest political grouping of the European Parliament to be their candidate for President of the Commission. So he has had overwhelming support. 26 out of 28 countries supported him. You don't have unanimity. We have a democracy. We have different points of view. It's normal. There shouldn't